Live from London, this is Global Business.
Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Juliette Mann.
And I'm Sally Burdett. Our top stories. Developing the green economy, international investors and major companies gather in Beijing to talk trade and how to stoke growth.
A good day's work. $15 billion worth of investments are announced at the annual Choose France summit.
The shine wears off Shein's dream of an IPO in New York, but the fast fashion retailer is now eyeing a London listing.
Russia's top defence chief is replaced in a surprise cabinet reshuffle as President Vladimir Putin begins his fifth term in office.
Is the outlook red, white or rosé? Chinese tipples make a showing at Italy's largest and most prestigious wine fair.
China will continue to open up and share its economic development. That's the message from the country's vice president as the third Global Trade and Investment Promotions Summit takes place in Beijing.
It's brought together global business leaders, as CGTN's Biran reports.
This year, the summit saw a gathering of heads of chambers of commerce, business associations and trade promotion facilities, as well as high-level representatives from Tesla, Walmart and other Fortune Global 500 companies. Chinese Vice President Han Zheng said China will continue to work with the international community amid all the global uncertainty to strengthen openness and exchanges, promote free trade, and stimulate growth drivers for digital and green development. The summit also includes parallel forums focusing on smoothening supply chains, promoting exchanges between U.S. and China on turning the San Francisco vision into reality, and the AI industry, among other issues.
China is already integrated very closely into the global manufacturing supply chain. It provides a lot of inputs, and at the same time, China is also a very, very big market. 18% of GDP, of global GDP is China. Therefore, China has a very important role, both as a part of the manufacturing chain and also as a part of the global market.
Italian companies, they focus on Chinese partners to promote the digital trade of the quality of their products. So this is one of the key elements to cooperate between the Italian companies and the Chinese market.
The summit launched the Beijing Initiative calling for a multilateral trading system based on mutual benefit, mutual trust, openness and cooperation within the global business community, meanwhile safeguarding the global supply chains and actively nurturing the new momentum for AI technologies as well as green economy. Bian, CGTN, Beijing.
Take a closer look. So far this year, China's foreign trade and investment has remained resilient. In US dollar terms, Chinese global exports rose by 1.5% in April. That's compared to the previous year, of course, while imports climbed by 8.4%. Over 12,000 foreign companies, some working with Chinese partners, registered in the first quarter of the year. That's up more than 20% on 2023. Foreign investment capital amounted to $42 billion in the first quarter, which is an increase of over 40% on the previous quarter. Julian Fisher, chair of the British Chamber of Commerce in China, attended the summit in Beijing today, and I asked him what the main takeaways from the gathering were.
I mean, it really was a phenomenal event in terms of the turnout and the people who were there. I think my personal takeaway was really I was struck by the speech from Dilma Rousseff, the former president of Brazil. Just talking about Brazil and the development of Brazil, but also the BRICS and those kind of wider trading bodies, the global south. And I think throughout the whole event, you saw people referencing the BRI, RCEP in Asia, all of these different trading blocks and different groupings. And I think that's really, really important to be in a room surrounded by those different perspectives to understand that, global trade is not just North America. It's not just Europe. There is huge amounts of people and wealth and development happening all over. And I think, China is really at the center of that right now.
However, what we're seeing at the moment is China and the USA somewhat at odds. The USA threatening to impose tariffs, concerned about China's supply of EVs. To what extent does that sort of geopolitical tension, if you will, impact on countries like Britain?
I mean, we do a sentiment survey every November, and, you know, this year in our sentiment survey, the three biggest challenges for British business in China were the domestic economy in China, the global economy, and geopolitics. So you can see there that you know, it really has an enormous impact, and that geopolitics, you know, is often to do with the US-China relationship. So I think it really does impact things, and I think one of the reasons these kind of meetings are quite important is just for all of us to get into a space and to talk quite openly and to understand that there is going to need to be discussion, there's going to need to be compromise, there's always going to be situations that are not going to work only in one country's favour. So I do think dialogue is the only way forward. You know, I explained that, you know, over 250 years ago, the British thinker Adam Smith wrote The Wealth of Nations, explaining that, you know, we can't be protectionist, we can't operate in a mercantile way, that if we really want kind of global prosperity, we all need to trade fairly and openly with one another. So I think that was one of the key messages.
And where does it go from here? I was reading about this San Francisco vision, which is to bring together Chinese and US entrepreneurs, which sounds like a great idea. Are there all sorts of initiatives like that underway to build that relationship between people doing great business in various countries?
Whether it's the British Chamber or the EU Chamber or the Mexican Chamber, I think one of the things that we're all asking for is more governmental engagement. You know, it's great that Xi Jinping just visited Europe, but, you know, we also want to see world leaders coming to China as well, because I think, you know, COVID was a real rupture and it was a real challenge because for about 3 years you didn't have a lot of travel in and out of China. And I think you can see now that the government here is desperately trying to kind of encourage people to visit, whether that's at a student level, whether that's at a tourist level, you know, having visa-free travel with a lot of countries, or government to government as well. So yeah, more engagement the better. For Britain, post-Brexit, are things easier or harder at a summit like this? It's an interesting question. I mean, I think particularly today was quite interesting because when it comes to supply chains, the UK has probably quite a different view to a lot of countries and a different set of specialities. You know, I mentioned when I was on the panel, 80% of the British economy is services. And you can't have supply chains without insurance companies, you know, large consulting companies, risk assessment, all of those kind of areas that the UK is specialised in. So I would say that actually what we offer is quite complementary with what China is trying to do. You know, China is clearly the manufacturing hub of the world, but the UK is also a powerhouse in services. And I think one thing we're seeing with our member companies now, which I think is a real positive, is that as China and Chinese companies want to go more global, they're often leaning into the expertise of British service and business service companies to do so. So I think that's a real positive.
The annual Choose France summit has been taking place in the regal setting of the Palace of Versailles, just outside Paris. President Emmanuel Macron was front and centre, which saw some $15 billion worth of foreign investments pledged. Let's talk to our correspondent Ross Cullen, who joins us now from Paris. And good to see you, Ross. So a good day for President Macron.
Yeah, Juliette, Emmanuel Macron always uses this chance to try to show off France. This summit has been going now 7 years, a brainchild of his during his first term in office, to try to bring all this investment into the country to show off just how attractive France is to foreign sources of income. And we saw some of those big deals announced. The French finance minister also said that he wants to see France turning from a nation of consumers into a nation of producers, but really a chance for President Emmanuel Macron to hammer home just how powerful France is in terms of attracting new investment into new technologies such as artificial intelligence and cloud infrastructure, but also those key technologies like energy, agriculture and pharmaceuticals that have been around for a long time. Let's listen in now to a little bit more of what the French leader had to say.
It is a fundamental step, but it's only one step because with you, I look at what's next. We are entering a totally different world where the competition will be ferocious. We can only win with this competition if we have trusted partners, and you are among them.
Well, you talk about new investment in new technologies like artificial intelligence and cloud technology. I mean, who are some of the big investors?
Well, there are a range of well-known names and less well-known brands. Juliet, $16 billion in total in that investment that's been announced for this summit. Microsoft, just over $4 billion in terms of trying to support the building of cloud infrastructure, expand their operations here in France, try to expand the number of employees as well. Amazon, their US tech rival, more than $1 billion from them in terms of supporting their AWS or Amazon Web Services, so more focus on cloud infrastructure and artificial intelligence as well. Some of the smaller firms, Estonian data storage firms, Spanish energy companies, to some of the more well-known brands as well, like the pharmaceutical heavyweights, Britain's GSK and Denmark's Novo Nordisk. Now, we also know that there were Chinese firms involved, potentially more investment there coming from China, especially after the recent visit just last week from President Xi Jinping here to see his counterpart, President Emmanuel Macron, and those focus for the Chinese firms is mostly in sectors like battery manufacturing. Juliet?
All of that sounds good for jobs. Ross Cullen in Paris, thank you very much.
China has announced it will issue its first ultra-long special treasury bonds in a bid to boost the economy. The Commerce Ministry says $140 billion worth of bonds will be issued beginning from Friday, with 20, 30 and 50-year bonds available. Beijing says it will help fund mega construction projects and boost security programs.
Freight train services between China and Europe were up 10% on 2023 in the first 4 months of the year, with more than 6,000 trips completed. Thousands of tons of goods were transported to more than 220 cities across 25 European countries.
The online hotel reservation site Booking.com has been told it falls under the EU's new Digital Markets Act. The platform, which has a 60% share of the European market, has been given gatekeeper status due to its size and must observe stricter competition rules or face fines. It means the Dutch-owned site will have to moderate content more closely and allow customers to switch between services.
Profits hit a high note for Tencent Music Entertainment in the first quarter, up 28% to $212 million, beating expectations as more users pay for streaming. China's largest online music corporation saw revenue shrink a little and fewer monthly users across free and paid tiers, but average user revenue rose 15%. Parent company Tencent Corporation is expected to announce its first quarter financials on Tuesday.
Chinese low-cost retailer Miniso is aiming to expand its overseas operations this year by opening nearly 600 new outlets. It'll be the first time since 2019 that the majority of their shops are outside China. The expansion should see them running over 3,000 outlets abroad.
The shine appears to have worn off, but Shein's hopes of listing in New York.
There are reports that the fast fashion giant, which was founded in China, has hit a number of hurdles as it explores a venue for its highly anticipated IPO. John Terrett is at the New York Stock Exchange and he joins us now. Hello, John. Happy Monday.
I like it.
Talk to us about Shein. What's happening?
I see what you did there, and I'm nothing but impressed. Because, you see, Americans are always going to call this company Shine. They're just not going to change their ways, even though we know it's pronounced Shein or Xi'an. And the thing is, it does look as if the shine has come off things a little bit, really, because there was a lot of excitement here on the floor of the exchange about the IPOs coming up in 2024. We've had Reddit. I know people are hoping for Kim Kardashian's company Skims. We don't know whether it's coming, but I know they want it to. And then there was a lot of hope about Xi'an or Shine as well. And the problem is the charm offensive seems to have gone a little bit wrong now, because whenever you do an IPO, you have to charm everybody before you actually do it. And the problem is Wall Street has issues. We've all got issues, but Wall Street has issues with Xi'an. I'm not going to go into detail about what they are, mainly because I don't know, actually. But one of the things that they think here might help is if Xi'an was a member of the National Retail Federation, which I think it's applying to. No word on whether it can join just yet. But if that were to happen, it would give a level of support and a level of confidence when it comes to investing in Xi'an, which these people here have to do. Now, there is a rumor It's just a rumor, and I can't back it up, but there's a rumor that Xi'an or Shine is looking to London. We'll have to see. No one knows, but it's possible. And in the meantime, all I can tell you is that on Friday last, we had a very, very successful Chinese IPO here. We covered it live on this program. It's Zeekr, Z-E-E-K-R. It's a luxury electric vehicle maker, part of the Chinese automotive corporation called Geely. And Zeekr on Friday was priced at $21, came out at $26, closed at $28, and is now up a bit more at $30. So you can see they can do it if they want to. That's the thing. But in the case of Shine or Xi'an, everything's on hold, at least for the time being.
So, John, let's move away from Xi'an. And my colleagues here, I did actually ask them, and they said Xi'an is the correct way. So now we all know. Talk to me about SoftBank earnings, which are in.
Yeah, must I? Oh, right. Well, SoftBank, as you know, is the Japanese technology investor. That's the thing. It's the SoftBank Group. And what they do is they really invest in new technology. And as you know, that means AI at the moment. And they've just given us their latest set of earnings, and there was a surge in their profit and a surge in their assets as well. And part of this should be of great interest to people in the UK, where you are at the moment, because part of it was the success of ARM Holdings, which is based in Cambridge, that designs microchips. It doesn't make them, but it does design them, and it designs them very well. People like the company. Now, the irony of this is that ARM Holdings was going to come to market in London, and they swapped to New York because they felt that London was messing them around, and to punish London they came here, which they did a few months ago. Anyway, the point about this is ARM Holdings is doing very well, thank you very much indeed. However, there have been extra costs associated with it for SoftBank, including, I think, moving that IPO from London to here. And so therefore, although ARM is doing very well, actually it didn't contribute as much to SoftBank's bottom and top line as you might have hoped, or certainly they might have hoped. But today's news is that SoftBank, with their earnings, is saying that it intends to concentrate on AI in the future. And then as an addendum to that, it's now being reported that ARM Holdings is going to introduce its first AI chip. This is significant. Its first AI chip to compete with the likes of NVIDIA and Intel. And that will be next year in 2025. And as a result of all that, SoftBank is up 2.5% here, and ARM Holdings, which trades here, is up 6%.
Let's talk about gaming now, which really is serious business. I want you to explain to us how a roaring kitty could be responsible for an increase in stock by GameStop.
Now, when I first heard this, when Connie told me about this morning, our producer, I thought, oh, that's not much of a story, really. Mainly because it involved extra work for me, actually. But anyway, it is a heck of a story. It is a heck of a story. It is the story of the day here on Wall Street. But let me try to explain. Do you remember in 2021 when people in their basements had nothing else to do because they were stuck in there because of COVID, and they were betting against the professionals on Wall Street with companies like GameStop and AMC? Remember all that? Well, it went away, didn't it, for about 3 years? And today it came back big time with a man called Roaring Kitty, whose real name is Keith Gill, which is not half as exciting, but we'll call him Roaring Kitty. And he issued, for the first time in 3 years, a tweet today on X. And it's a cartoon or a meme or a GIF or a graphic or a logo. And all it is a man in a chair sitting forward. Now, my friend Jay over here actually has a copy of it, which I can now hold up. I don't know, we can't zoom the camera in, but hopefully you can see there's a man in a chair leaning forward. Now, that's all that he tweeted today, this guy called Roaring Kitty. But the point is, Roaring Kitty 3 years ago led thousands of people to invest in GameStop and AMC and other what we call meme stocks when Wall Street was shorting them, and there was this battle that went on between the people in their basements and the professionals on Wall Street. We'd never seen such a thing before. Ordinary people made lots of money and then lost it, pretty much, in most cases, because Wall Street and the government changed the rules, essentially. This is all the subject of the movie called Dumb Money. I recommend it to you if you want to find out more. And it also led to congressional hearings to find out what was going on. And the other thing that changed is that Wall Street has never again ignored people in their basements. They used to think they were amateurs playing at day trading. People take what they think now seriously. So that's a big change. Now, what happened today was, I'm finishing now, don't worry, Roaring Kitty issued that tweet, which we held up just there, and it was taken that he wants to get back in the game, And GameStop shares were up 120%, with several stoppages on the way, up 120%. Now it's up 63%, and AMC, the other key meme stock, is up 42% as we speak at this moment. What does it all mean? Well, you don't know, Jade. He's a professional. He has no idea. I have no idea. I don't think it's going to go away, but for now, it is what it is. It just is what it is. We'll have to see what happens next.
Well, John, I'm sure investors are purring today. Thank you very much, John Terrett, coming to us from New York.
See what you did there?
We've got to start doodling. John, you've got to start doodling. You're watching CGTN. Still to come. Palestinians are forced to flee Jabalia in northern Gaza as Israeli forces push deeper into an area where they claim to have defeated Hamas months ago.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
I think it should be more global cooperation.
I would like to hear more the voice of the developing countries.
Globalization has lifted more than 1 billion people out of poverty.
The green transition has to happen. It's a necessity.
For China and the United States are important powers in the world.
What unites us is much more than what divides us. And I believe China is committed to this agenda.
Join me, Juliet Mann, to set the agenda at these times every weekend on CGTN.
Events have consequences. Words create impact.
One more offensive in a long line of battles that's been ongoing for more...
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots. Excuse us.
The world today matters for your world tomorrow.
The number of casualties is growing quickly.
Why, this is one of the hardest hit towns in the region.
The world today, every day on CGTN.
Welcome back. Fierce clashes have been reported in northern Gaza as Israeli troops pushed deeper into an area where they claim to have defeated Hamas months ago.
Israeli tanks appear to be advancing towards the centre of Jabalia refugee camp, forcing hundreds of Palestinians to flee. While at the opposite end of the enclave in Rafah, Israeli forces have stepped up aerial and ground attacks. The UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees says nearly 360,000 people have fled the southern city since last Monday. Our correspondent Akram Al-Satari is in central Gaza.
The fighting is still ongoing in Jabalia. The bombardment is ever increasing. The number of people who are affected is still indefinite. The Palestinian Ministry of Health says that they cannot count the exact number of people who were affected by the ongoing bombardment because of the fact that the ambulance services are not able to, the ambulance services and crews are not able to recover the bodies of the people who were killed, are not able to go to the areas that were hit because the bombardment is still ongoing. So the number of people who are affected by that bombardment is increasing. However, the Palestinian Ministry of Health cannot confirm the exact number of people. They confirmed the number of people who killed over the 24 past hours, and they said around 65 people were killed. In Jabalia, we're still waiting to hear from the Palestinian Ministry of Health. Also, the Israeli troops are pushing deeper into the Tell el-Za'atar area. Tell el-Za'atar area that would eventually lead to the center of Jabalia refugee camp. The fighting is still ongoing. The bombardment can still be heard, and the fierce fire exchange can be heard by the people who are trying now to move and flee from the ongoing bombardment and fire exchange that has been taking place in that area.
And Akram, Gaza's health ministry has warned that the whole health system there could collapse within hours. What do we know? What more do we know about that?
The Palestinian European Gaza hospital made a statement. In that statement, they were warning that they are about to run short of the fuel supplies in that hospital, which means they will never be able to run the backup generators, which means that some of the oxygen transfusion systems will come to a full halt, which also means that people would be eventually killed. After 7 days of full disruption, complete disruption of the supply of the fuel to the hospitals, and after 7 days of also total shutdown of Rafah and Kerem Shalom hospitals and Kerem Shalom crossings, the hospitals are suffering, and they are now warning the international community that they are going to stop all their services, not that they want to, but that they have run out of all the fuel that they have. There's also a food crisis in Gaza Strip, and also medical supplies crisis. The situation is extremely dire. During the Passover, for 10 or 11 days, no supplies were allowed into Gaza, and now after that no supply, they have the full blockage of the two terminals that are lifelines to the Gazans. So the health system has been struggling and now is about to collapse because of that insufficiency of the supplies and because of the blockade that is still continuous. Appeals are made to the international community. ISO, MSF, Doctors Without Borders and Nasser Hospital, they are all very alert, and they are all very afraid that those services would come to an end, which means more Palestinians would die, not because of the bombardment and the devastation, but rather because of the lack of medications that would help and cure their diseases and help and cure them.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the war against Hamas is a struggle to secure Israel's existence, liberty, security and prosperity. Let's speak to our correspondent Sarah Coates, who's in Tel Aviv. Sarah, Netanyahu made the comments as Israel marks Memorial Day. Of course, tomorrow is Independence Day. What more can you tell us?
It's been an extremely somber day right around the country, with almost 1,600 new names added to the list of fallen soldiers and also victims of terror. Now, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, during that speech, he spoke out about unity among the Israeli population, but really right now that is very far from what is being felt here on the ground. Now, during his address, a number of people started chanting, "You took my children." Well, there was another protest, many people walking out from Netanyahu's speech in silent demonstration. Now, elsewhere across the country, many people who've lost loved ones over the last year or the last previous years, they visited cemeteries, I should say, paying respect to those who have died. Let's take a listen to one of those women.
I hope they will bring up the terrorism just for themselves too, because their civilians is too painful. It's pain for everyone. Just the terrorism needs to stop.
And the mood here on the ground will dramatically shift over the next hour or so as Israel marks Independence Day and its 76th anniversary.
And Sarah, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, he's delivered some of the Biden administration's strongest public criticism of Israel.
He certainly did. He said that Israeli tactics in the Gaza Strip have caused, I should say, a dramatic loss of life among civilians, and also failed to neutralize Hamas. Now, he had a number of phone calls with Israeli officials overnight, and they are doubling down. They are pushing back, saying the Defense Minister, Yoav Gallant, telling Blinken that the Rafah operation that's ongoing right now down in southern Gaza is a pinpoint operation, saying that Israel will complete its war goals. Now, Israel maintains that the remaining 4 Hamas battalions are actually stationed down in that southern area of Rafah, although according to reports in US media citing senior US officials with a lot of knowledge around intelligence sources, they now believe that potentially the leaders of Hamas, we're talking about the likes here of people like Yahya Sinwar, that they're not actually hiding in Rafah, that they may actually be in places like Khan Yunis. And what they are telling the Israelis, this is according to reports, is if you stop this operation in Rafah, basically we'll tell you where these people are hiding.
Sarah Coates in Tel Aviv, thank you very much.
Russia's long-serving defense chief has been replaced in a surprise cabinet shake-up. Sergei Shoigu, who has overseen Russia's military campaign in Ukraine, is being replaced by former Deputy Prime Minister Andrei Belousov, a trained economist with no military background. President Vladimir Putin's reshuffle comes as he begins his 5th term in office. Our correspondent Dasha Chernyshova is in Moscow, joins us now. Hello, Dasha. Any clarity from the Kremlin about why Shoigu is being replaced and why now?
Well, we understand from the Kremlin that the nomination of Andrei Belousov to the position of the defense minister is made because the Kremlin wants to see a civilian heading the defense ministry. It is understood that Vladimir Putin wants to bring innovation and advanced ideas to the Ministry of Defense. The Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said that it's very important to put the security economy in line with the economy of the country so that it meets the dynamics of the current moment, he said in a statement that followed the announcement. We also understand that the Kremlin believes that the advantage on the battlefield is in the hands of the side which wins in terms of innovation. So at this point, the Russian military budget has been slowly growing. It has increased from 3% to 3.5% and now stands at 6.7% of the Russian budget. This number keeps growing, getting closer to the indicators of the 1980s. And Moscow insists that to manage that budget, there has to be a trained economist dealing with this issue. Sergei Shoigu, in the meantime, has been reassigned to the position of the Secretary of Russia's Security Council. He will also be dealing with the matters that are related to the military of the country. But in the meantime, the tactics and strategy, the Kremlin says, will remain the same. They will still be in the hands of the Chief of the General Staff, and Valery Gerasimov is going to retain his position, at least for now.
And what more do we know about Shoigu's replacement, beyond that he's not a military man, that he's a finance man, Andrei Belousov?
Well, that's right. Andrei Belousov has an extensive economic background. He has been taking different positions within the Russian government. He has served at some point as the Minister of the Economic Development. He was also the Vice Prime Minister of the country in charge of the economy. He was an advisor to the Russian president. But interestingly, he does have a lot of achievements when it comes to the Russian drones. Now, we understand that he is the one who oversaw Russia's national unmanned aircraft national project that was launched in 2023. Under this project, the production and the manufacturing of drones in Russia has increased manifold, and a couple of months ago he said that Russia is going to produce more than 32,000 drones each year by the year of 2030. So it is understood that his achievements in this sector have also contributed to this nomination, because again, Moscow says it wants more innovation when it comes to the military.
All right, thank you so much, Dasha Chernyshova, coming to us live from Moscow.
Spain's Socialist Party has won the most seats in Catalonia's regional election, ending a decade of separatist leadership. It's a major blow to the pro-independence movement.
The result is also being seen as vindication of Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez's controversial policies to normalise relations with Catalonia following a failed secession bid in 2017. Our correspondent Ken Brown reports from Madrid.
A dramatic drop in support for the independence parties. That's the headline emerging from these regional elections. As you mentioned, the first time in over a decade that a Catalan separatist party will likely not be at the head of the Catalan parliament. The winners here, the PSC, the Catalan Socialist Party led by Salvador Illa, they won 45 seats of the 135-seat chamber. Not quite enough to govern alone, but they could lead a coalition. it's a big blow for the separatist movement. They went from 54% of the vote in 2021 to 45% this time out. So it does appear that many people are giving up on the idea of independence, and the reasons for that are many and complex. Some experts point to the pandemic and the Ukraine war, the resulting cost of living crisis there, people potentially thinking more practically than ideologically. There's also a lot of divisions within the separatist movement. So right now it's the socialists that are the real winners here. I think maybe you can point to Brexit also. Dare I say that things haven't gone all that well since Brexit for the UK. Catalans have seen that also. And as I mentioned, the socialists, the real winners here, they're also in government nationally. They are calling this a victory for moderation. Here's what the leader of the PSC, Salvador Illa, had to say.
Esta nueva etapa que abro en Cataluña será una etapa.
This new era that Catalonia is starting will be a new era for all Catalans, whatever they think, wherever they come from, wherever they live, and whatever language they speak. No one, no Catalan will be excluded from this new era that we are starting today.
You can get highlights from the week's news in Europe and China direct to your inbox from CGTN's Storyboard email newsletter. Sign up at europe.cgtn.com/newsletter.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, warming relations after decades of tension. Leaders of Greece and Turkey pledged to keep communication open despite their differences.
Welcome back to Global Business Europe with Sally Burdett and me, Juliet Mann. The headlines again. Developing the green economy. International investors and major companies gather in Beijing to talk trade and how to stoke growth.
A good day's work. $15 billion worth of investments are announced at the annual Choose France summit.
Russia's top defense chief is replaced in a surprise cabinet reshuffle as President Vladimir Putin begins his 5th term in office.
Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis has been visiting Turkey in an effort to foster better relations between the neighbouring countries after years of tension. But disagreements appear to remain. Our correspondent Evangelos Sipsas joins us from Athens now. Hello, Evangelos. So talk to me about what was discussed.
Well, if I had to sum up this meeting into one sentence, it would pretty much be that we agree to disagree. And that's what was said during this press conference. There was a lot of topics that they both disagreed on, from the Byzantium monastery that Erdogan said he's going to move forward and convert it into a mosque, where the Greek Prime Minister clearly showing his dissatisfaction, saying that we should keep that monument, that the monastery at its original form as it was, so it can be included in a UNESCO heritage site. There wasn't much disagreement on the border issues or disagreement much on Cyprus, but where the big disagreement was pretty much with the back and forth of the two was the conflict in the Middle East. And what is Hamas? Or the Greek Prime Minister called Hamas a terrorist organization. And then Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the Turkish president, said, I feel saddened by this announcement of yours of calling Hamas a terrorist organization. I clearly feel that it is a resistance organization. That's what they both pretty much disagreed on quite a lot. They're saying that the Greek prime minister was saying that Israel has all the rights to be able to defend itself after the October 7th incident that took place against terrorists. And that's again when Tayyip Erdogan said, we are not happy with that term. That makes me feel very sad of you. And he also made this broad announcement that we heard for the first time that currently in Turkey, over 1,000 Hamas members are being hospitalized. It's the first time that the Turkish president announced such a thing. And that's when it came along, when the Greek prime minister said, we agree that we disagree. Though the one thing I have to say that they agreed on when it came to the topic of Hamas and the conflict in the Middle East was that there needs to be an immediate ceasefire. So the protocols were broken. There was a lot of back and forth. And that's pretty much, I would have to say, I would sum up the joint press conference of the two. We agree to disagree.
Agree to disagree. But all of this in the context of trying to improve relations between the two countries. I'm wondering if there's anything else on the agenda that perhaps signals there is a coming together of the two nations.
Well, there has been positive notes out of this press conference as well. If we just track a little bit back from last December, that they all opened pretty much a channel of communications, and that has shown that for the past 5-6 months now that communication has grown, and there has been some positives coming out of it. The two sides did sign a number of MOUs in sciences, in health, in better communicating of the dispute that they have between the borders. Also, when it comes to civil protection, they both understand the difficulties that both countries are facing with either earthquakes or natural disasters like fire. They said that we would like to help each other when they're in need, either Greece to send help over there, as they did during last year's earthquakes, or Turkey sending over firefighters to support with the wildfires here in Greece. So that was the positive note of them two discussing about it. They also want to increase the trade between the two sides from $5 billion to $10 billion. And they also want to make it easier for Turkish tourists and the public to come to Greece. There has been a pilot project that has been in place. This channel of communication helped that pilot project to run smoothly. Now, more than 10 islands here in Greece allow Turkish citizens to receive a visa upon arrival. Now, the Turkish president wants that to exceed more to more cities across the country, to airports, to other parts that will be easier for Turkish people to come in. But also, on the positive side as well, the Greek prime minister said that he will continue to promote Turkey's accession to become part of the European Union. Of course, after they start complying more with European values. So there was quite a lot of positive notes here and there. But this disagreement on Hamas and the conflict in the Middle East pretty much overshadowed the press conference between the two. Though they did pledge that they will talk further in New York during the United Nations General Assembly. But before that, they said they will meet again on the sidelines of the NATO summit, which is going to be taking place in July in Washington.
All right, thank you very much. Evangelos Tsipras joining us there from Athens.
South Korea's foreign minister says Beijing and Seoul should look for ways to work together. This message from a meeting with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi in Beijing. The two-day visit's the first by a South Korean foreign minister to China in more than 6 years. CGTN's Jack Barton has more.
South Korea has been making a concerted effort to convince China that while it is seeking stronger security ties with Japan and the United States to counter the DPRK's ever-expanding missile program, it still counts China as a neighbor it wants closer ties with, especially when it comes to the economy. This is expected to be one of the key areas of discussion between the foreign ministers of China and South Korea at their talks in Beijing. Despite Seoul's overtures of reassurance, Beijing believes it has grounds to worry. Late last year, South Korea announced a plan to reduce supply chain dependence on China by 50% come 2030. Seoul, in turn, is still suffering from some economic restrictions imposed by Beijing in 2016 in retaliation for the deployment of a U.S. anti-missile system with a radar capable of peering deep into China. Improving economic ties is important for both nations. China is by far South Korea's largest export market, and more than 20% of South Korea's imports come from China. However, last year, South Korea recorded an $18 billion trade deficit with China, the first such deficit in more than 3 decades. South Korean exports fell by 20%, while imports from China dipped 8%. As part of efforts to try and revive economic dynamism between the nations, South Korea's foreign minister is also expected to meet with Korean business leaders for an exchange of ideas on how to boost bilateral trade. Jack Barton, CGTN, Seoul.
Well, as part of all of that, South Korea has been working to lower its inflation rate, and it eased from 3.1% in March to 2.9% in April, but underlying pressures do persist. The rate of inflation slowed after South Korea increased imports from China. Green onions imports jumped 764%, and Chinese cabbage rose 171% in March. Agricultural product prices soared 20.3% last month. That's 3 months in a row now that prices have been over 20%. The South Korean government's reducing tariffs on certain agricultural products to try and stabilise food prices.
Nigeria has pledged to bring in new regulations to try to tackle illegal digital currency trading. Authorities say crypto platforms are being used to manipulate the value of the local currency, which has already seen a 60% fall in value in the past year. CGTN's Deji Bademosi reports.
Nigeria is one of the biggest markets for crypto trading. Its use, mostly by the country's tech-savvy youths, has boomed in recent years, especially as severe dollar shortages made it difficult for Nigerians to pay for goods and services abroad. Officials, however, say they will clamp down on cryptocurrency, which they have blamed for weaknesses in the naira. The Securities and Exchange Commission said it will delist the naira currency from peer-to-peer trading to avoid manipulation. Some players in the crypto space have welcomed the move.
If you're putting your money in an exchange, the first thing you want to be sure of is how secured your money or your asset is. So a regulation is not something to scare you off. So if a regulation system is coming to the country, it's not like they're trying to scare you away from the business or scare you away from the market. No, it's a security.
The industry is waiting for the rollout of the new regulations to assess their impact on their operations, but it's certain that crypto platforms will not enjoy the kind of freedom they were used to.
I had calls to freeze over 300 accounts. One of those accounts, we discovered that the guy that traded a volume of over 50 billion in the last 1 year. Nobody knew outside the financial regulation.
Authorities are fast-tracking reforms to keep the value of the naira stable, check currency manipulation and money laundering. Recently, Nigeria's central bank banned mobile money operators and fintech firms from onboarding new customers on the suspicion that they were being used for illicit foreign exchange transactions.
The government is trying to attract foreign investments, so it must put its house in order. It must try and stabilize the naira, because the naira is the symbol and the focus of our economy, and is the currency through which all transactions that has to do with this nation must be used. So that is why I believe central bank simply wants to sanitize.
The battle by monetary authorities to stabilize the naira is still a work in progress. The currency has continued to decline, despite being devalued twice over the last 12 months. But the central bank has vowed to stabilize the economy of Africa's most populous nation. Deji Bademosi, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
Donald Trump's estranged former lawyer, Michael Cohen, has told a U.S. jury that he conspired with the Republican presidential candidate to suppress stories that could damage his 2016 campaign.
Cohen has been testifying against Trump in his criminal trial. The former president is accused of paying $130,000 in hush money to adult film star Stormy Daniels over an alleged liaison. Prosecutors say Trump falsified business records to cover up his reimbursement to Cohen. Trump denies all charges and has called the case a witch hunt.
Still ahead on Global Business Europe. A rosé outlook? Chinese tipples make a showing at Italy's largest and most prestigious wine fair.
Events have consequences. Words create impact.
Unprecedented scenes that we saw.
The cleanup operation is now well and truly underway.
Parts of southern Europe remain in a state of emergency.
Context gives meaning. People make history.
Far more than 1,000 people have come here today.
But authorities are still on high alert.
So now we've actually become the border on this road.
A complex world demands a comprehensive view.
But with the cleanup efforts more or less under control,
the economic impact is bound to ripple across the country.
There's plastic pollution everywhere.
Because the world today matters for your world tomorrow.
This is the living area of the crew.
The focus is firmly on future technologies.
Well, this is something completely different.
The world today, every day on CGTN.
Welcome back. Chinese winemakers are putting their expertise to the test at Italy's largest and most prestigious wine fair.
Organisers in the city of Verona say this year there's been a significant Chinese presence, as well as a notable increase in female producers and buyers. Our correspondent Hermione Kitson reports.
Vinitaly is more than a fair, it's an expression of Italian tradition and identity.
What we do is try to convey the message of why we are Italian and why we are so special in making wine.
The event is a chance for producers, exporters and buyers to taste the best in the business. In addition to 4,000 Italian wineries were brands from 30 countries, including China. Shanghai-based industry expert Michelle Yu says women are playing an increasingly important role.
We are very happy to see more and more winery owners from China. They are women, actually.
Italian people are quite open to discover the wine from over the world. Yes, I'm quite happy to see the face and the feedback of the professional in Italy.
Italian professionals also had the opportunity to learn from their Chinese counterparts. A mixology masterclass of the spirit Baijiu explored its heritage, production and flavour.
The key for Baijiu tasting is not to drink too much, because the alcohol level normally more than 50%. Actually, in China, we all consider smelling is the key to Baijiu, not the palate.
Organisers say the four-day event attracted top buyers from the US, UK, Canada and China.
Despite the strong turnout at Vinitaly this year, the industry isn't without its challenges, such as climate change and higher production costs. However, the Italian government has pledged to help the sector adapt to protect both its economic and cultural importance.
Leonardo Pizzolo is the owner of Abruzzo winery Valle Reale. He says in the past 20 years, due to warmer weather, his harvest has been brought forward 1 month.
Which is enormous. If you think, in the next 50 years what can happen. The only way for us to fight this climate change is to find out a place to put the vineyard in a higher altitude.
It's a challenge for winemakers worldwide and a theme sure to be discussed at the next industry event, Wine to Asia, in Shenzhen in May. Hermione Kitson, CGTN, Verona.
Years after they finally won their right to stay in the port of Antwerp in 2016, residents in what's been described as a Belgian ghost town have high hopes it can finally start to be rebuilt.
Ambitious plans for a regeneration project are underway, but the town's become a hub for graffiti artists too, which raises questions over how best to merge the old with the new. Victoria Innes reports.
In northern Belgium, sandwiched between a nuclear power plant and the port of Antwerp, is a small village called Doel. Nicknamed Belgium's ghost town, in the early 1970s, Doel was home to more than 2,000 people.
The village was a pearl.
It's a marvelous spot. Everybody wanted to be there.
Now, though, just 21 remain.
What hits you immediately is the contrast between the loudness of the port in the background and the silence within the village itself. And you notice immediately the abandoned buildings, the boarded up windows and the evidence of what used to be here.
For as long as people like Johan can remember, Doel has sat in the shadow of the port. But in the 1970s, when it was earmarked for expansion, they were told they had to leave.
At one moment there was like cranes and bulldozers and whatever, police. They tried to get us out, and then you think, what am I? Am I just a problem, or am I a human being?
And so, while the town itself got quieter, the voices of those who stayed behind got louder. And for more than 2 decades, they fought to stay. A fight they eventually won. But now many of the locals want to rebuild their town. And a key part of that centres around this, graffiti.
Filmmakers, photographers, all kind of artists, and also graffiti artists. And they had this canvas of a whole village to go wild. So, and they did. And the result is visible everywhere.
Artists have come from all over the world to add their work to Doel's walls. It's hoped that as the village moves away from survival and towards revival, much of this can be preserved so that people can come to share in its journey.
The village can be a combination of old and renovated buildings and new buildings that are really future-proof. It should become a kind of laboratory.
It's an ambitious project and Doel's future is still uncertain. But those working here told me it's all about finding a balance.
Will everybody be happy? I don't think so. But if we can create together a region where it's good to live, where it's good to work, that's the goal.
And for the moment, a town which was once doomed seems instead to be bursting with potential. Victoria Innes, CGTN in Doel.
And finally, when it comes to panda conservation, it seems all is not quite black and white. Cameras at Changqing National Nature Reserve in China's Shaanxi province have captured a very rare brown and white panda roaming the park.
He's one of only 7 brown pandas ever to be spotted, and all of them in Shaanxi's mountains. The last sighting was 6 years ago. Scientists say their brown fur is the result of a missing gene that affects melanin production. Who knew?
Amazing. All right, before we go, our top stories once more. Developing the green economy, international investors and major companies gather in Beijing to talk trade and how to stoke growth.
A good day's work. $15 billion worth of investments are announced at the annual Choose France summit.
And Russia's top defense chief is replaced in a surprise cabinet reshuffle as President Vladimir Putin begins his 5th term in office.
That's it for Global Business Europe. Thanks for watching.
More on all our stories at europe.cgtn.com. Do follow CGTN Europe on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok.
And you can go to CGTN Europe's channel on the Telegram app or scan the QR code on the screen to get stories and updates sent direct to your phone.
Coming up next on CGTN Africa Live. We'll see you again tomorrow, same time, same place. From all of us here in London, goodbye.
Goodbye.